Hello and welcome to Zoo TV. I'm Channing Reed. After 15 years as a professor and an administrator, the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Jennifer Walsh, will be leaving APU for a change of scenery and a new role. I got a chance to catch up with her earlier where we focused on her legacy here at APU. Take a look. Well, Dr. Walsh, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with us, actually to let me come into your office and do an interview. So I would like to begin with, what were your circumstances before coming to APU, and then how did you find yourself here?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for being here. Gave me an excuse to clean up the office a little bit, so thank you. When I think back to my first year at APU, coming into this community was really, a godsend. I was at Cal State LA at the time, really loved my students there, but I wasn't teaching in my home discipline. I was in a traditional criminal justice program, and while I love crim, and I'm so excited that we now have a program like that, it wasn't my first disciplinary love, and so an opening came at the time I started thinking maybe I wanted to look around. I'm a Southern California native, so I was eager to stay in SoCal, and I was also really intrigued by the opportunity to work at a Christian university and to be a part of a community that put God at the center of all they did. So it was really a kind of a circumstance that I think was divinely ordained, and I've had just a wonderful time here.
You said that APU was your first exposure to Christian higher ed. What was that experience like?
It was a little surreal because I had come through public education my whole entire life. Up until my graduate program really was my first exposure to private higher ed. I went to public school as a kindergartner through high schooler, went to University of California, Riverside for my undergrad, and didn't really even understand what Christian higher ed was. But I was really intrigued by this thought that we could openly share faith as faculty and students and staff, and to really embed that in the teaching, and it was really kind of a beautiful thing to see all those things come together in a way that really couldn't have happened anywhere else. So I've been a big fan of places like APU. The CCCU schools are near and dear to my heart, and I'll be wishing them well moving forward.
You've been here at APU now 15 years, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
That's amazing.
It's gone really fast. I think about my time here in different seasons or chapters. The first several years I was a full-time faculty member, helped to launch a number of upper division courses in American Gov. I created the pre-law minor courses in the program, which has now just really flourished under Professor Hume. Then I moved into a season of Associate Dean and Common Day of Learning Director, and that was wonderful. I got to meet so many people on campus. And then the last several years as Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, it's been wonderful. I've been able to meet and connect with alums from all over our disciplines, really help our engineering program to launch well. We've got programs in the sciences that are thriving, and all of that has been really rewarding to see the growth and the opportunities for students come to fruition.
Being here, you've taught, is that 10 courses, is that correct?
At least 10 different courses. Okay. I've taught everything from American Gov and state and local politics to American government upper division courses. I created standalone courses in the presidency and Congress and the Supreme Court. One of my favorite things to do in the judiciary class was to take students down to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal courthouse in Pasadena, which is beautiful and historic and very majestic, and it gives students the opportunity to see oral arguments in person. I've taken students to the Nixon and the Reagan libraries, which are equal distance from campus, and that's been fun. I've taught a women in politics course, special topics in criminal justice, criminal law. It's been great. I've had so much fun to really to teach across my various interests, and I think students have benefited from that as well.
I'm sure that was fun for the students to get out of the classroom.
Yeah, to do a little road trip, right?
Yes. Let's talk about your books now. So you're talking about the ThreeStrikes Law book. What kind of made you write that book?
Yeah, so much of sentencing policy, and including three strikes, is really political in that there's people who take very clear sides one way or the other on how punishment policies should be implemented or what they should look like. And at the time, I was really finding myself in a middle place of sorts, where I could see on the one hand some of the arguments that were being made by lawmakers and district attorneys about the need to address recidivist crime. This is crime committed by repeat offenders. They tend to be the ones that are least receptive to rehabilitation programs within the correctional facility. And I also understood that policies like 3 strikes that are heavy on sentencing had a dramatic impact on certain communities, especially communities of color. So I was trying to figure out, where I personally fell on that issue. But in the meantime, studying it from a scholarly perspective gave me an opportunity to share both sides of the argument. And it's very complex. While we often, 3 strikes is a bumper sticker slogan, and it was chosen intentionally because it's so familiar in our American vernacular. The law itself, at least in California, is incredibly complex and very intricate. And so my book was a way to highlight not only the details of the law and how it have been implemented over time, but really the pros and the cons and some of the things that we might want to consider for moving forward with reform. And interestingly, a couple of the ideas that I brought forward in terms of reform were actually implemented both at the legislative level and also ratified by voters as well.
And that was that took you across the world, correct?
Yes, yeah. So some of my efforts in highlighting the need for reform also gave me an opportunity to speak into the version that New Zealand Parliament had introduced. This was back in 2009. And I testified before the Law and Order Select Committee of Parliament and was able to meet one-on-one with the Department of Justice Minister, which is their equivalent to, say, the Attorney General at the federal level, and really highlight some of the things that I thought they might want to pay attention to if they were going to move forward with the law. And it was rewarding to see them take that advice to heart and make those changes. And it was also rewarding when the law passed, the member of Parliament bringing forward the law thanked the Prime Minister, and then he also thanked me. I was the second person he thanked, which is very surreal. As a political scientist, your goal is to make government better. And in this case, I felt like I helped to take a law that had some problems and make it a little bit better.
So you did say you're a political scientist at heart.
Yes.
So I would say, or I would ask you, if you decided to not go forth with education and higher ed and teaching and administrative roles, what might you do if you were an elected official? Or is there any specific title that you would want or position in that?
Well, president, of course, right?
That's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just love the opportunity to lean in and to help organizations or governments or structures be functioning better. And so as I've worked with elected officials and appointed officials, I just find it so rewarding to be able to help advance good practices, good policies, things that help citizens live their lives better. So I would love to explore, at one point I thought maybe I'd go back to law school or do that. And then when I shared that with my husband, he just said, we're done with school, right? Which is probably a good thing. But yeah, I think at some point I'd love to run for something elected if that's in God's plan.
Academic Chapel. You speak every year, which is it's a great time to hear from you and for students to listen. I know this past Academic Chapel, you spoke a little bit about the division that is currently in our country, even in our community. Do you think the media has any role in that? And if so, what can students do to kind of find their own grounding?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things we can do. I am troubled by the politicization and the polarization that we see in our society. It seems like we have a hard time disagreeing without being disagreeable. And to some extent, some of the media is responsible for amplifying voices that would otherwise probably not get much attention or an audience. That's not to say there isn't good work by journalists, and I'm so proud of our Zoo News team.
Thank you.
Because I think you epitomize what we hope media looks like, right? So you've got sober-minded, fair-minded journalists out there really trying to bring a good story that people should be interested in and not have it cloud clouded by myths or inaccuracies or just pure opinions that aren't grounded in anything substantial. But that's not always the case, and I love our internet-based media sources because it gives the average person an opportunity to be heard. On the other hand, there's often not as much gatekeeping as we've had in the past, so some voices are being heard more regularly that aren't necessarily healthy or constructive. So I think there's some things we can do. I mean, I think we can intentionally choose to not be disagreeable, even when we disagree or are passionate about our beliefs. I also think that we can remember that this is all temporal. For people who claim faith, we have an eternal perspective, and while it's important what happens here on this earth, I think our time here is important and valuable. Ultimately, it's going to end, and really the things that we take with us are our relationships with God and our relationships with each other. And it's important to remember that there's nothing on this earth that's worth breaking fellowship over, because in the end, we know that our Redeemer redeems all. And so it's for me important that that idea that politics are temporal, people are eternal, really guide all that we do, even when we feel very passionate about issues. And trust me, I'm very opinionated. Nevertheless, I love my brother and my sister more than I love my politics.
Going back to your legacy here at APU, you are actually responsible for the opening of the new Center for Public Affairs in Sacramento. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I would love to. It's a dream come true. 10 years ago, when I used to teach state and local here on Azusa campus, we would bring in local law officials, state lawmakers, people who work for lobbyist organizations, and really talk about California and politics. And California is the 6th largest economy in the world. We are, of course, the largest state in the nation. We're the most populous state in the nation, and yet we're often overlooked. People focus on New York, and don't get me wrong, New York is great. Or we look at the national trends, which are important, but California is so instrumental, and even just the day-to-day well-being of our citizens, and it's accessible. You can know your state lawmakers. You can make a difference here in California, and that's what I was trying to communicate. But Sacramento, being 450 miles away, is a bit remote. So my thought was, if we could bring students up for a semester or a season and expose them to the state capitol and get them familiar with Sacramento, where the hub of activity happens, that their perspectives might change and it would motivate them perhaps to get involved even in their local communities. So I proposed a center away in Sacramento, but we didn't have any funding available and I couldn't get any donor interest in it. And it was a nice idea at the time, but I ended up having to shelve it. A couple of years ago, when we found ourselves more actively as a campus involved in some state political issues, I dusted off that proposal and said, is it time to think about having a presence in Sacramento? And the right donors stepped up to the plate. The Darling Foundation was one of the first to the table, and they said, yeah, we see your vision and we think this is going to be a great idea. So that was about 18 months ago, and we went searching for a national director and found Dr. Chappelle, who's done an amazing job of creating internship opportunities and introducing people to APU that we had never known were out there. And we have our first cohort of students wrapping up their semester here. So to see it not only go from dream to reality, but to actually have real students they've landed full-time internships, full-time jobs out of that experience, and they're excited to come back and be ambassadors for the program for next year.
Wonderful. Well, with that being said, what is on the horizon for you?
It's bittersweet because I'm going to be saying goodbye to APU, although my heart will always remain a part of it here. Starting June 1st, I'll be the new provost and senior vice president for Hawaii Pacific University in Honolulu. So
must be nice.
I'm expecting people to come visit. That's my hope, at least. And of course, the Sharks, which is HPUs. I'm going to make that mistake a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
HPU's mascot. They're in the same Pac West athletic division.
And so we'll see you.
Absolutely. I'll be wearing my APU sweatshirt or hat while I'm cheering on the Sharks. So
wonderful.
I don't expect to go far. At least my heart will always be a part here.
And what's your advice to, I guess, students who are kind of in that same position where we have new jobs on the horizon, maybe from graduating, and we're not really sure what's next?
Yeah, transition moments are really important. It gives you an opportunity to take stock of what you've learned in the last season. One of my favorite scriptures, and I shared this at the baccalaureate ceremony a couple years ago, is the scriptures where after the Israelites cross the Jordan, they are encouraged to set up memorial stones. So when they pass by there or their children ask about it, they can point to that and remember God's faithfulness. So I think as we're transitioning out this chapter that we're leaving behind, if we can set up a memorial stone in our minds or in our hearts to say, I remember the faithfulness of God in this season, then even the challenges and the opportunities that take us away and perhaps never give us a chance to physically return, we'll always take with that experience with us. And we'll remember God's faithfulness, because certainly every opportunity is an opportunity to learn about the greatness of God's grace. So that's my encouragement, is to remember what happened, how God was faithful, and to keep that with you and share it with your children, share it with your friends and your family, because you never know how that might encourage someone else along the way.
And you say to not hold things so close and to kind of just be open to what God might have for you.
Yes,
right?
yeah. So as I shared before, my heart is a little torn, because part of me wants to remain in this community. It's been a wonderful place, but I also want to be open to God's leading, knowing that there may be something else in mind. So if I were to write my own script, if I were completely my own, I would, I think, shape it a little differently. But we're not God. I mean, we're God's people, and that means our life is not our own. And we have to be open to the opportunities that present themselves, even if it's a little scary at times, or a little, the unknown is always is daunting to think about. But if we hold things loosely, we don't want God to have to pry something out of our hands, right? That's a painful process.
Right.
But if we hold it loosely and recognize that all things are gifts, then I think we'll be open to new challenges, new opportunities as they present themselves. Some of the best decisions I've ever made in hindsight came with just saying yes, not knowing exactly what that yes would lead to. So a yes can be a magical thing. You never know.
Well, Dr. Walsh, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for us to just come invade your beautiful office and to talk a little bit about your legacy here.
Well, thank you so much, Channing. I really appreciate talking to you.
We have the best wishes for you moving forward and hope to stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
While she really is a great person and an administrator, she has done so much for all of us here at Zoo Media and the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And although we will miss her, we do wish her the best in her onward journey. Thanks for watching Zoo TV. I'm Channing Reed. You can stay connected with breaking news and the latest updates by following Zoo Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and by visiting our website, zoonews.com.